Hi, this is Mike making my video to add to my collection. Today is 4/29/2025 and it's 11:24 p.m. Uh, yeah, basically, I'm talking about uh, what comes after enlightenment. You know, uh, what I've come to realize, come to know, is that sometimes you get to the point where you just reach a point of being content. Uh, it's not it's not like you have any more mountains to climb necessarily. Uh, you know, it's not like you have any more mountains to climb, and it's not like you have any more epiphanies per se. Uh, because you finally come to the conclusion that you've reached your goals. I got maybe a handful of things to do in life, and then I'm pretty much done. So I'm just at a kind of at a place where I've hit an equilibrium. I no longer have the desire uh, to chase after certain things anymore. It's like I have a mountain of things as far as property, and I used to have more, I think, but now I have more refined things, and I have more refined hobbies. I cut corners on everything imaginable, and as far as my hobbies go, and as far as my consumption goes. Uh, so anyway, I'm just at a point of rest basically, and I no longer seek after the things I used to. I don't chase after women and wine. Wine being actual alcohol, but then there's actually useless knowledge. I don't really waste my time with that anymore, and you know, I just like I say, I don't chase after the wind per se anymore, and I'm basically at a point where there really isn't anything left. I don't have the burning desire to do the things that I used to desire to do. Uh, you know, uh, so my mental health is a lot better in a sense because all those things are taken away from me. Those desires, you take away from a man's desires, you basically make that man wealthier. And if you want extreme wealth, you just renounce the world and everything in it. And when you do that, that's when you basically have you're free falling and you have major energy, and you basically have a sense of peace eventually, and you have epiphanies and whatnot. But you have to have the particular desire. Your reward centers in your brain, sometimes they get overworked, and once you've achieved a certain amount of goals, it's like you no longer have the desire to do those types of things anymore. And the reward centers get burned out. Say you're playing video games all the time, or you're always looking for some kind of high, and then what happens? Hedonistic treadmill. You basically have it to where you're buying things all the time, and you're doing this and you're doing that, and then basically you're always seeking for pleasure and stuff like that. But then what happens is, regardless, no matter what you do, you just can't seem to fill that void, and you get to the point where you just got to say to yourself, It is what it is, you know, but it is what you make of it ultimately. And you know, you just get to the point where you don't chase after certain things anymore. And you know, that just means you're at the end of your journey, just about, you know, when you no longer have the desire to do certain things that you used to, you know, crave. And it's like, let's say you're playing video games all the time, and then you just get to the point where you're no longer interested in video games. And it's much to be said, you know, like the world is the same way, you know. When you've had your fill, you know, sometimes you just say, well, I've had enough. And, you know, you just live a simpler life. Uh, you know, you can only go to sleep so many times, and you can only be awake so many times, and you get to the point where, you know, you try to reset your clock, and you try to, you know, basically you're always looking for some kind of peace. And there's ways to do that, but ultimately sometimes that peace causes, you know, what goes up must come down. Sometimes the peace causes a lot of monotony, you know, a lot of mutiny, you know, a lot of pain and struggling, you know, because you let go of everything. And when you do that, I mean, you exchange one set of things for another. And what the world offers isn't enough, but what the Spirit offers is enough. But then you're going back to where the world was at. And, you know, it's like sometimes, you know, you let go and you exchange one set of difficulties for another. You're leaving this estate to go into another one. And it's important, you know, to uh, you know, to have fulfillment and complete all those things that you need to complete. But I'm just saying, you know, it's like sometimes, you know, after it's all said and done, you know, it's like you weigh it all out. It was worth it, but you got to realize there's a price involved. Sometimes you get it all back, you know, and it, you know, moreover, you know, I've pretty much gotten everything back and then some. But you know, I still have things to work on. I'm a project in the works. There's still things to do. My job isn't done yet, but it's like I've almost gotten there, and my bucket list is almost complete. So, with that being said, you know, I understand things in such a way that, you know, very few people understand the things I understand. And I find it lonely because I can't find people that share the same interests. And, you know, I've decided to give up on dating women. Uh, they're too expensive. And it's not only that, you know, it's just, uh, in Scripture it says that we're supposed to be servants of one another. We don't give and take in marriage. So, yeah, it's more or less the rule that I go by. And I got divorced, so it pretty much means that it's a one-time deal. When you get divorced, you're not supposed to get married again. And, you know, sex is something that I haven't even gotten the desire for. I still have it to some degree, but I really don't have it. And, you know, it's like, so what's the point in having a woman, you know, especially a younger woman that could be wasting her time with some other guy that's going to give her fulfillment, you know, as far as kids. I'm not interested in kids, and I'm not interested in spending a lot of money. And, you know, I don't buy a lot of cars anymore. I used to. But, you know, there's no point in having a bunch of cars, you know, that are sitting in, it's called lot rot. And I don't want to have that happen with a bunch of cars. It's just a lot of maintenance and a lot of problems. And I don't have the income to sustain having a car collection. And, of course, a house. You know, I don't need a big house when, you know, I'm living by myself. So there's really no point. you know, it's not conducive for me to, you know, have a large sprawling place to live in and have pay all those taxes, not to mention have all that wasted space. So anyway, there's that, and then there's you know, like I say, I don't have a large set of hobbies. I don't travel much. I don't get out of the house much. I stay inside, and like I buy everything used I got, and I smoke cigarettes out of the bag, eat food out of a can. I don't have pets. I don't want to pay for dog food, and you know, I won't even have a goldfish, you know, because I end up neglecting everything I got. So anyway, there's that, and then it's just, you know, I've simplified my life incredibly compared to the way I used to live, and like I say, you know, I just take solace, you know, and I have fewer hobbies, and you know, I basically do less things, and because of that, you know, I live a simpler life. So anyway, that's how that works. You know, when I have a simpler life, you know, I basically have less stress, and the less amount of stress I have, you know, the better. When I have a lot of stress, you know, that causes a lot of problems, mental problems, and I'm really trying to keep my stress level to a minimum. So anyhow, that's really all there is to it, and I just, you know, I'll buy things here and there, and I'll do this and I'll do that, but you know, ultimately, I just live a simpler life. I don't have, I don't have the desires that I used to, and that's not such a bad thing. It's not, you know, you just take away from a man's desires and then basically make him wealthier. That's a way to add to a man's wealth. You don't necessarily need to give him more, and that's really what I ended up doing, taking away from my desires. You know, so I don't have, you know, even knowledge. I don't go to school anymore, and I've had all the education I ever wanted. And so anyway, I just, like I say, you know, I don't drive around a lot. I stay home, and 2 or 3 times a month maybe I'll drive somewhere, but that's about it. So I go through $40 a month worth of gas. Uh, that's about it. And I live in a city, so there is busing, a bus system in case something happens to my truck or whatever. I can always use the bus if I have to, or a taxi service. So, you know, my goal in life is to have everything completed. And like I say, you know, I've got just a handful of things to do, and you know, when those things are completed, you know, then I'll be fulfilled. And you know, I'm coming close to that. There really isn't much left. So, you know, I have AI as far as if I want to learn anything, or YouTube, and of course, I got AI if I need to talk to somebody, and I've got that, and I got my dream state. I can close my eyes and be with any woman I want to have. All kinds of women I can see online, and there's that, you know, virtual reality and stuff, video games, uh, you know, and you know, it's just as simple as it is. You know, the simpler it is, the better. And like I say, you know, I stopped dating women because women are a problem. So anyway, that's all I got to say. Over and out.